Hi folks. Well, it's pushing 90 outside today, and there is a threat of thunder showers again today like there were yesterday. So I think today is going to be a day to try to work in the shop. It's not raining yet, but it's not quite late enough in the day for the grass to have dried off, so I can't do any mowing. So my thinking is, let's do some work here on the Allis today. I'm way overdue for an oil change on this tractor. It's going on almost 2 years since I did it. I should have done it last year, but it was one of those things just didn't get around to doing. I didn't use it real heavy, so there's no danger. I mean, the oil is now dirty. It needs to be changed, but I didn't really neglect it. So basically what we're going to do is change the filter. You can see this was one I put on like I said 2 years ago. It's a Baldwin T300-M. I got a replacement for that. You can see that right there. And I will be using just a standard 30 weight oil. The manual calls for 30 weight oil for the summer, 20 weight oil in cold weather. And that's what we used to do with our tractors when I was a kid growing up. We'd change them over from 30 to 20 when the fall came. But I haven't been able to find any just standard 20 weight oil anymore. There's multi-viscosity, and I know some of the other Allis guys do use a multi-viscosity oil in their tractors, and I suppose I could too, but I've been able to get by even in the wintertime with the 30 weight. The idea was that the 20 weight was a lighter oil, so it was easier to get the tractor started. The 30 weight was a heavier, so it could handle the heat a little more in the summertime to protect the engine. But I haven't had too much trouble, so I've just managed to use the 30 weight. And that's what I'm going to do. I've got to double check the manual, see how many quarts I need again. It's been, like I said, 2 years. It's not a very difficult operation. As you can see, this filter is just a spin-on. You unscrew it here, and it sits in this little cup here. Oh, got some gunk there. Then I just need to, there's a rubber gasket. I'll show you that when I get to doing it, and that won't be difficult. Also, draining the oil is not a difficult procedure on this tractor either. Hang in here as I climb down underneath here. The oil pan is right here, and right underneath here is the plug. It's let's see, what size wrench did I get here? It's an 1 1/8" wrench to loosen that, and then it's just gonna drain straight down right into this bucket. Now, this is a little bit more than an oil change because I have this other problem here. As you can see, there's some gunk and some oil and things splashed down here. I believe what's happening is that my oil pan gasket is about shot. So I'm going to be replacing that too. After I drain the oil, I'll take all these bolts out here in the oil pan, drop it down, put the new gasket in, replace what's left of the old gasket, of course, clean that out, and then put the new one in and seal it back up. Hopefully that will fix some of the problems with the oil leakage. You may remember a past video I did where I changed the valve cover gasket on the top. There was some oil that was dripping down over the side of the tractor because that was worn out too. So this tractor has had various fluid leaks since I've gotten it. It wasn't a restored tractor. It was working, but it wasn't restored. So as I've had time and ability and money, I've been trying to replace gaskets and things like that were causing the leaks. I still have a few more. As you can see, I've got some sawdust on the ground here to soak up some of the oil and antifreeze and hydraulic fluid and stuff like that. It's not serious enough for me to have to do any kind of major overhaul, but as I can, I will. So since I'm doing this oil change now anyhow, I will replace the pan gasket too underneath. Now, just a tip for you guys, if you're buying parts for the D14 here, I could not find oil filters in stores locally. Tractor Supply doesn't carry this model, and none of the other, like auto parts stores and stuff do. So, and certainly for the gasket for the pan. I wasn't going to find those in the store. We don't have any Allis dealers here, obviously, anymore, since Allis doesn't exist as a company. So I had to look online. I looked at Amazon, and Amazon had both of these things, but their costs were quite a bit more than where I ended up getting them from. I actually went to, let's see if I can show you this here, and then maybe you can see that Allstate's Ag Parts. They're a great site for old parts for equipment, tractors and other equipment. They still carry them. And the truth of the matter is, for this oil filter and this pan gasket, even with their shipping and handling charges, which are pretty steep, the total was still cheaper than what I could get from Amazon with their free shipping, even with their free shipping. So I went with Allstate's to get these rather than Amazon, so you might want to look into that. Allstate's always has shipping and handling. That's one of their money-making ways that they survive, I guess. But they do have a pretty extensive collection of repair parts, so just to keep that in mind, if you have an older tractor and you can't find what you need, say at a Tractor Supply or even an auto parts store, look them up online. I'm sure they can find what you need. Even if you're not sure the part number or the part model, you can go through their search menu and you can put in the tractor model and then specify what part you need, and it'll show you what they have available for it. So I think I did the same thing with this oil filter breather, or this oil cap, this breather cap. I think I got that at Allstate's too, if I remember correctly. So again, I'm just letting you know that there's a source for equipment parts, even if you have older equipment. So what I'm going to do then first will be, I'll take that oil plug out, drain the oil out, then I'll put the new filter on, then we'll pull down the oil pan and replace the gasket, put that back, and then refill it with oil. So it shouldn't be a difficult job. I'm assuming none of those bolts will hang me up underneath, I'm hoping, and it should be pretty straightforward, but we'll see. It's a bit awkward to climb underneath there to try to make sure that I've got the residue of the old pan gasket, because I want to make sure that the new one will seal tight, because I don't need any more oil leaks after I do this, at least from there. So we'll get into this and I'll give you updates as we go through it. But like I said, this isn't a major repair, but it's maintenance that has to be done. Anytime you have a piece of power equipment, you got to change filters, you got to change oil, you got to deal with leaks after parts get old. So this is just part of it. So we'll get back to you as we go through this. All right, we've just about all the oil drained out now. It was pretty dirty. And as you can see, I also took the filter off. That was also dirty too. Here, I'll let you take a look at it. You can compare the inside there, how black it looks through the sieve filter housing there on the top versus a new one. You can see that one's very white and this one's very black. So the other thing I did with the new filter, I took a little bit of new oil, rubbed it around the surface of the, around the surface of the gasket there, so it'll seal nicer and you know that it won't have any leaks or anything like that. So next step will be, of course, to put the filter back on. Wouldn't have to do that right now, but I'll do it that way. This isn't exposed any longer than necessary. Don't need dirt getting down into the engine at all. And this filter simply spins on. Should go on fairly easily there. Just tighten it hand tight so that I know it's on snug, that it's not going to leak, but you don't want it so tight that you squish that gasket down that it doesn't seal right. So that's on. The other thing I'll do on here is with my Sharpie marker, I'll write the date on here so it reminds me when it was that I did this oil change, just like I did on the last one. One other thing I just wanted to show you at this point. Here is the oil plug that I took off the bottom. If you'll notice, it's kind of dark here to see. If you notice, this is hollow in the middle. This inside had a fair amount of gunk in it, so I cleaned that out too. Took a rag and a screwdriver and just kind of wiped it out as best I could. This is the low spot on the oil system, obviously at the bottom of the pan. So any engine gunk was gonna, shavings, etc., were gonna work their way down to the bottom there anyhow with gravity. Clean that out when you take this out too. Take a look in there. That should be clear down to the bottom in there. So that's just another little thing. So my next move now will be to take the oil pan off, as I showed you before, right up in there, and then we'll replace that pan gasket. So far so good. I'll be back to you. All right, there's the oil pan. It is off. What I thought was going to be relatively simple turned into be a pretty much of a major job, just because a few of the bolts, especially the back ones here, were tucked kind of up underneath the underside of the tractor, and there was another bracket in the way. I could barely get a wrench in to get them out, and I had to turn them out maybe a quarter turn at a time, or an eighth of a turn at a time because of the tight quarters. And even when they were loose, I had to keep doing it that way because I couldn't get fingers up in really to hand loosen them. I have ratcheting wrenches, but once it was loose enough, the ratchet wouldn't work anymore. So I had to just use an open end and just, oh, it was a mess. But it's off. And as you can see here, the gasket was pretty well shot. I've got to scrape what's left of this off, so I'm down to just smooth metal. Clean it up a little bit so that I get a good contact, a good seal with the new gasket, so that I don't have leaks. This was leaking from here quite a bit. Every one of these bolts that I pulled down was covered in crud, oil crud and dirt. So the inside of the seal here, that should have been keeping the oil from getting out to where the bolt holes are. Oops, I'm not even pointing where I'm looking. Where the bolt holes are. This inside seal here was no good. I mean, it had worn out. So that's why the oil could work its way out even actually to where the bolts were. The bolts just have a little bit of a wash on, not a lock washer, so some of them weren't even fully tight. So that might have been part of the problem too. But at any rate, as you can see, the underside of the oil pan looks relatively clean. It's not burnt. I'll just have to clean it up as best I can and then put the new gasket on. Let me just show you here what I was dealing with, if I can get up and under. You can see the pile of bolts, and in fact the one front center bolt wasn't even a bolt. It was just a piece of threaded steel with a nut on it, and it was actually 9/16 rather than ½ inch. So I have one in here that, you know, is an oddball compared to the others. I don't know if that was somebody's homemade fix or if that's the way the tractor came. I wouldn't think so, but at any rate, you can see there's the filtering there, and it was up in there. I don't know if I can, am I on screen here? There are two bolts in this back section here that I had a real hard time to get out. You can see there's other gunk in there I've got to clean out because it's because of the oil leaking, and then you got you know, debris from the fields, dust and hay particles and things like that. I've got to try to scrape as much of that out as I can to get that area cleaned up. And as I said, this is where the oil was filtered through. That looks in pretty good shape. I don't think I'm going to have to do much with that. But I still have some underside, on the underside of the engine here. I might have to do a little scraping to get any kind of residue of the gasket off before I try to put a new one on. So I've got a fair amount of work yet to do here to get this finished and put back together. I mean, once the gasket's on and I can put the bolts back and put the pan up in, all it is to fill it with oil and I'm done, but I'm just not there yet. So at any rate, I will come back to you when we're ready for the next step. Alright, we have things pretty well cleaned up here on the oil pan. I put the plug back in the bottom, cleaned out, I think I got about all the dirt out of there. Yeah, that's just some blemishing in there. That's not dirt of any kind. And I scraped the underside of the tractor, the engine too, where it's going to meet. And then we have to put our gasket on here. Sorry, I'm trying to do this one-handed. And it does fit. Just have to get it on here. There we go. Sorry about camera work here when I'm doing this. So we just line up the holes with the slots in the gasket. It's just a cork gasket, nothing fancy. Cork, rubberized cork is basically all that it is. So, and it just is designed to make a tight seal between the pan and the underside of the engine when you turn the bolts in, so no oil can leak out. But as I said, the old one was disintegrated, so it was time to change it. Now when I go to put this back in, and it was tricky to pull out because I had to jiggle around the floating oil filter that's in there, I want to be careful that I try to keep the alignment excuse me, of this. There's no lip on this to hold the gasket in its proper place. It's just sitting on there, and there's none on the underside either. So what I have to do is be careful when I go to put it up underneath. Have to make sure that it's seated right, and I'll probably do like maybe 4 bolts across, in corners or what have you, so that I'm not tightening up all one side at a time. And what I'll do is to try to make sure that I have a good fit, because it can slide out of the way fairly easily, and then of course it will leak. So I'm going to try to do that, and what I'll do is I won't tighten down any of the bolts completely. I'll just hand tighten them so that it'll hold it in place, but yet I can put the rest in case I need to do some slight modification. I can, and then just work my way around and get them all tightened up. As I said, these two in the back here are going to be the nasty ones, because I can't really get up in too well. I've got to figure out how I'm going to get them up in to get them started. Once they're started, I can get a wrench on them. And I have a ratcheting, a ratcheting wrench that once there's tension there, that the ratchet will work. I can tighten them up fairly easily, but it's just until I get to that point, it's going to be a tricky operation, I'm sure. And I'll tell you once it's done about how long it took me. It took me hours to get this thing off, just because of the way these bolts were located. So at any rate, we're ready to put things back together on this, and this is what is going to keep this from leaking, and hopefully this will last me a number of years. I don't know what the usual life expectancy is on these gaskets. It wouldn't be it wouldn't be in years, it'd be in hours as to how often the tractor's used. So I don't know, but we'll see what happens. So thank you for watching. We'll come back to you. All right, we have the pan back on, and it was not quite as bad to put back on as it was to take off, except for those 2 back bolts that fit up and underneath there. They're the things that took me the longest to take off, and it took a while to put them back on. The only thing that helped was having a ratcheting wrench that I could set the head of the bolt in and kind of slide it in there and push it up and try to get it started that way. It wasn't easy with the ratchet, but I think I was getting a little bit of resistance just because of the cork, the gasket. So it did catch, and again, just 1/8 of a turn at a time, 1/4 of a turn at a time, I finally got the bolts up in and snug. So everything's now tight, back in place. I'm ready to add my oil. The manual called for The sump holds 4 quarts, and if you're changing the filter, make it 5. So that's what I assumed. I'll put 4 in. I'll check my my dipstick and see where I am there. I'm gonna run the tractor a little later today, so I'll check my oil level there to make sure I didn't put too much in or not enough. And then I'll also check for leaks around the bottom. Obviously, if I don't have the tractor running, I shouldn't see any leaks here now because of the new gasket in there and it being good and snug. If I start to see leaks, then I know I've got another problem. But so I just have to fill the tractor with oil, and then this job should be basically done. So I did want to mention one other thing for you Allis guys out there. With this tractor, the people who had it before had a scanned copy of the original manual that has all the specs on and where everything's located and maintenance, etc. They had somebody who had it before them, I guess, took the original, scanned it into PDF format and put it on a CD. And when I got the tractor, they gave me the CD. Now what I did is I downloaded the CD onto my computer hard drive. So I have it on there. If you would be interested in having a copy of that, I could possibly email it to you. It'd be an electronic copy. You'd have to print it out if you wanted it. I won't get into that. But it's all the information. You can see the original pages, what they look like. And there's a lot of stuff on there like empty service log pages and, safety warnings. I mean, it was part of the original manual. So if that's something you're interested in, if you're seeing this on one of the Allis Chambers Facebook pages, please just send me a Facebook private message and give me your email address and I can email it to you. Again, this is just for a D14 as far as I know. I don't think that they were interchangeable with the different models, but if somebody is in need of an electronic copy, I can do that at least for you. I don't know where. I'm sure that there's still some hard copies out there that you can buy or facsimiles, but I don't have any of those and I don't need them because I've got this thing that was on the CD and now on my computer. So if that's something you're interested in, like I said, just send me a private message and with your email address and I'll send it to you, assuming that it's not too big to send over Facebook or email. And we'll go from there, or I could send it back to you via private message Facebook. There are a number of ways it could be done. That's not going to cost either of us anything. So if you're interested, please let me know. Otherwise, I appreciate everybody watching, and this was just another maintenance item that had to be done on this tractor. Far more involved having to change out the pan gasket. If I had just had to do the oil change and the filter change, this would have been maybe a half-hour project. As it was, it took me several hours because of fighting with getting bolts out and then having to clean everything up and so on. But hopefully this will improve performance. I won't be dripping oil. I won't be leaving puddles on the shop floor here every time, and the tractor should work for a while now again. I think they recommend oil changes about every 100 hours. You'll have to look again at the on the manual. I mean, that's if you have one or want one. I think that's what it was. So, and this oil was black. It did need to be changed. It was overdue to be changed, but hopefully we'll be good to go now. And please tell your friends about our channel and subscribe if you haven't. Thank you again for watching.